Good morning, everybody. My name is Michael McGillicuddy. I'm here with Youbanfa, and I'm here with Mrs. Dayna Martin. She is a wonderful person, an unschooling expert, and she's going to share her thoughts with us today. Dayna, I'm going to speak Chinese just for a second to introduce the video for our Chinese audience. 大家好，我叫 Michael，我是从有办法公司来的，因为总是有办法。今天我们有一个很有名的很好的一个人叫 Dayna Martin， 他是一个非学校教育的那个老师。And yeah, that's enough Chinese for now. So Dayna, good morning. Thank you for coming to be with us today.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. All right, so let's start first. Dayna, what is unschooling for those of us who don't know what it is?
Unschooling is a form of homeschooling in which you don't use a curriculum or any kind of forced learning. It's focused on natural learning and parents and children pursuing their passions together and learning from what they love. So it's about family and about connection and respecting children's choices and what they want to learn in life.
That sounds really good. For some, I get it. I've read your book, Radical Unschooling. It's a really good book. For some of us, though, that might seem a little bit abstract and like, whoa, that sounds good, but what is it? How do I do it? I was wondering, could you tell us what an average day is like for you? Like, what are the nuts and bolts of that?
Sure. An average day. So let me first share that I have 4 children. Oh. I have 4 kids who have never been to school.
Oh.
I have a 10-year-old son, a 13-year-old daughter, a 17-year-old daughter, and a 19-year-old son.
Whoa. And they've never been to school?
Never been to school.
Not one day?
Not one day. Never.
Wow.
No, they've always had the choice. They've always had the option to go if they wanted to go, but they've decided not to go and continue to learn at home and out in the real world, pursuing what they love. So a typical day at our house would be the kids waking up whenever they're ready to wake up, and some of them making breakfast. Oftentimes, one of them makes breakfast for the rest. Really? Ivy, my 13-year-old, is the best cook in the family, so usually she's cooking pancakes or something really great for everybody. And everybody eats together. Ivy loves to sew, so she might be sewing something on the sewing machine. My son Orion loves computers and working on computers and learning things through YouTube and different resources like magazines and books. My son Devin is a blacksmith.
That's so
and
cool.
He also, isn't that amazing? And he's completely self-taught. So he's a blacksmith and has a forge outside, and he makes different knives and swords that he sells on Etsy and different websites. My daughter Tiffany is a professional model who's actually going to Paris in a couple months for her first big runway show. So the kids are all happy, and I think what other people would consider successful, although success was never the main goal. The goal in our family for our children was their happiness. It's interesting because success is really what comes when your children are living a happy life pursuing their passions. Yeah. So that's what we're doing on a typical day.
That sounds like, paradise. Yeah, what you were saying, success leads to happiness. Happiness leads to success.
Right. Yeah.
That is so true. I mean, so many people think they'll just grind it out and then I'll be happy, and then I'll be really successful, but it doesn't happen, and nobody wants to be around that type of...
Usually it's the other way around, isn't it, Michael? Usually most cultures feel as though that it's like happiness will come at the end of success, at the end of years and years of misery and really difficult work. And you have to go through years of being, having to work hard to get to happiness. And it really is the other way around in our experience and the other families that I've worked with over the last 2 decades, that when your children are happy and they have a life rich with resources and they're pursuing their passions, that they do have opportunities and have great success through pursuing those. It's just a natural side effect of that. So I'm so happy to be able to share this with everybody because it's worked for our family. It's worked for hundreds more all over the world. And it's just something I love to talk about.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, it sounds like it really works. And that sounds like, I don't know, I guess when you say success was not the goal, I totally understand. But yeah, they're all doing what they really like to do. And it's like, whoa, a blacksmith, a model, a computer whiz, and then you said Ivy really likes to sew.
Ivy sews and she loves animals. She wants to be a veterinarian, so she's studying that.
So cool. Thank you for that. So yeah, basically you let them do what they wanted to, study what they were interested in, and then it just took them to heights unimagined.
Yes, exactly. And yeah,
That's so cool. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Wow. All right, let's see. What about your personal philosophy? I really liked what you wrote about in your book. Do you mind sharing how your personal philosophy is intertwined with unschooling?
My personal philosophy about focusing on the positive
Yeah.
and yeah. My personal philosophy is that we create so much of our life experience through what we're focused on.
Mm-hmm.
And so something really important to me personally and something I study and learn about is ensuring that whatever my dreams and goals in life are, that I do different things to work toward those. Because we live in such a pessimistic, fear-based society, I realize that so many people are creating their whole reality and their futures based on that negative fear-based way of living every day. And so I choose to do something just the opposite. So I focus on the positive and what I want, and I've always taught that to my kids, and they've learned to practice that too. So at times where one of us in the family is really kind of low and things are having not going the way we want, we talk about it and we help each other learn how to change that. So that's a small part of my personal philosophy. Yes.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I really like the kayak story that you wrote about in the book where
Oh, yeah.
that was so
Yes,
cool.
so many times. Yeah. But so if my children, just to expand on it a little bit now that you've shared that,
Mm-hmm.
so if my children want something in life, whether it's an experience or something material or something to as a tool for their passions, if we don't have the money for it, for example,
Mm-hmm.
I don't say no, we can't get that, because I know money is only one means of getting what we want.
Sure.
There's so many other ways to be able to create and manifest what we want into life. So I've taught them how to make vision boards. So if they want something and it's not in our financial means at the moment, you'd be so amazed with how opportunities come to get things that will just come into your reality based on we make vision boards, we talk about it. I have them just imagine what it would feel like to be in, for example, a kayak. My son Devin wanted a kayak, and amazingly, these things come into your experience, and it's almost like magic. So that's another key to that kind of positive mindset.
Yeah. I want to say I live in China, and I started a little, I guess, company, but more just like a mind frame shifter, where it's called, here, it's on my shirt, Youbanfa. It's hard to see right there, but I wear it on my body every day because for me personally, I realized I have kind of a very pessimistic way of thinking, and so I have to be real vigilant about what I think, and like, oh yeah, there actually is a way. Oh, sorry, it means there is always a way, in Chinese, and yeah, in Chinese the opposite saying is "meibanfa," which means nope, can't do it, no way, impossible. And it's so like common here. Like I'm vegan too, and if I ask for like, okay, can you guys make me some rice, like some fried rice, but don't put an egg in it? They'll say like, nope. Meibanfa, I don't know how to do that. It's like, just don't put an egg in it, but like that type, not everybody, but that level, like, oh no, that's impossible. So
Right.
yeah, so I love that you shared that because so many people here want to unschool their kids and take them, teach them themselves, but they just think they have this sort of mental block, like, but that's impossible. It's like you're saying, like, it'd be great to walk on water, but I can't do that. So what you're saying, though, you've been to the other side. You've
Yeah.
you've unschooled 4 kids already. It's worked out pretty much, not perfectly, but pretty well. And yeah, you're calling us from the other side saying, "Come on, join us. You can just, take that leap of faith and you will fly."
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's such a beautiful way to put it. I never imagined myself doing this. That's the whole thing. Is if you would have told me 25 years ago that you're going to have 4 children and you're going to parent them and raise them in this radical way, I would have said, "What are you talking about? Is that even something that people do?" I wouldn't have had any idea. But it all started so naturally for me. From the moment they were born, I always trusted them. And everybody around me was telling me all this advice that seemed to go so against what my instinct told me, what my heart told me, to let them cry in their crib and not hold them and feed them on a schedule. And there was so much fear of the future-based advice. I never listened to it. And it was really hard to go against our culture and do the opposite of what people told me. But when I would look at my child, I knew what to do, and I always followed my heart. And so unschooling to me was a very natural extension of all of that. And so I've just been doing since I've done, since they were born, and it's led me here. And it's an amazing, amazing life. And if I can do it, you can do it. So I just really want to encourage everybody and give them tons of resources to learn from about this life.
Thank you. Yeah, Youbanfa, there is always a way.
Yes.
How did you deal with the sort of pressure from family members or other people close to you saying like, no, you're doing it all wrong? Because that's been a recurrent question from other people here.
Yes, that's such an important question. And it was handled differently from my mother than it was my children's father's mother, so their grandmother, that happens to live right behind us. Okay. So my children's grandmother on their father's side, it was working in the school district. And so she didn't understand why she took it really personal. You know, I think for a lot of people that might be against it, they get really triggered. They take it personal as a personal insult to how they parented.
Sure.
Sorry, and so it's this really interesting thing. And so it's hard to say we're doing something totally different than what you did, because they feel like what you're saying, what they did was wrong. And so it just depends on who you're talking to. When I talked to my mother about it, she had an attitude of, well, that's great. I wish I knew about that when you were little. I'm so happy for you. And she was always so supportive. But so I had both ends of it. I had complete support from my mother, and the opposite from my mother-in-law. And it was hard. It was really hard. We were, you know, I was raised in a people-pleasing culture, especially as a woman. And when I was a little girl, the only time anybody would approve of me is when I was really obedient and I did what I was told and I got good grades. And then everybody around me, and everybody around me would tell me, oh, you're such a good girl. You're so wonderful. And then I would finally love myself when everybody told me I could. And so growing up as a young mother, when I had my first child, having that kind of rejection from my mother-in-law was so emotionally difficult. But so I was faced to almost choose between her acceptance, which was my whole heart at the time, because that's how I was raised, and my son. And so I was in this position of either listening to him and my baby, which was everything, or being completely rejected. And I chose him, and I've always chose him and all my children. And one thing I always tell people, and it's one of the quotes that I really, really love, and it's probably the most meaningful quote that just came to me one morning. It was just popped in my head, and it's, you need to care more of what your children think of you than what strangers or anybody else thinks of you. Yeah. And it's true. In our culture, we look around, and when I say our culture, I mean all of us. We're all one collective culture, all of us parents all over the world. We worry so much about what other people think. And we need to stop doing that and care what our children think, because that's truly where the impact is, and what they think of us, and if they love us and connect with us. So it really is going against what most people do, isn't it? Because we're taught tough love, and you're not your child's friend, and it's okay if they hate you. And
what? I'm sorry. I don't want to hear any more of that stuff, like that negative. But it's so true. You're right. I was thinking when you were saying that strangers are going to forget like how you interacted with them, 5 seconds afterwards, but your kids are going to remember. Like I remember like mean stuff my parents said to me when I was like 8 years old. Like it's still like ringing around in there. So I completely understand and agree with you. Yeah, your kids are way more important than a stranger, and like most people go like, yeah, you're right, they are. But then like as you said, like the programming is so deep embedded, and it takes a lot of, I guess, conscious processing to release those negative emotions and I guess be free of that. It's an ongoing process for me, and I imagine for you too, but you're kind of further along the road than that. So
still, one of the most important things when I'm giving an all-day workshop to somebody is learning how to reparent yourself. That's a big piece of all of this, and to trace back those things in which you may have forgot about that are so essential to be able to do it differently. So reparenting yourself in a sense is important to be able to move through all of that pain and the way that things might have been done to you.
What do you mean by reparent yourself?
Well, I mean, I just think it means through parenting your child differently, you are, in a sense, reparenting yourself. So you're going through the motions of how you wish it was done to you. So I think that empathy and compassion is one of the biggest keys. Is I always try to remember when I was my children's age with these certain situations and something similar I may have gone through, and what my feelings were. Because when you're on the other side of it and you're a parent, the voices are so loud to do things a certain way that you kind of forget that you know what to do and you remember from when you were a child. And so reparenting yourself is kind of remembering the way things were done to you and doing it differently with your own child. And it really is healing. It's healing for us who had something done differently that was hurtful. The authoritarian paradigm of parenting was really damaging to a lot of us when behavior modification and obedience and compliance were the main goal. Yeah. So that's what I mean by reparenting yourself.
Okay, I understand that now. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I wanted to add, I just finished the book Mirror Work by Louise Hay, which
I love that book, and I love her.
Book,
yes.
Right? So you already know, but for those who don't, it's a really fantastic book about self-love, and you might think like, oh, I don't need that, but everybody does, where you start by looking into the mirror and saying, I love you. I did it this morning when I was feeling a little bit nervous about the interview, or oh, this wouldn't work. Like, it's all good. I love you, man. It's going to be just fine. And it always is. And one part that sort of, I knew about that going in, but one part about the book which I really liked was connecting with your inner child, like the little 4 or 5-year-old that's inside all of us, and most of us just shove that little person down and ignore him and like are really cruel to him. And the book was so helpful at bringing that little child back and being your little buddy and guide and companion, because like when we're pure and innocent, we already know like what to do and how to interact. It's just, so many things that the metaphor's not coming. So many, I don't know, just people telling us up is down and black is white for so long. Eventually we start like getting lost, etc.
Right, and your instinct. I mean, as little children, we knew what was right, and we knew what was wrong on a very moral, conscious level. It's interesting how we were so silenced that voice got really, really quiet because it was so pushed down by the needs of others and controlled, us being controlled by everybody around us. But that voice is still there, and that's part of reparenting yourself. When you go back and you remember these times, something that I tell people when I'm connecting with them and sharing with other parents is that a lot of what I share with you, almost everything I feel like I share with parents, they already knew this. There's somewhere inside them that this is all familiar. And so my job is just to reawaken in parents what they knew when they were little children, when they were 2, when they were 3, when they were told to be quiet and sit down and to be good. And they had so much to say, and they had so much knowledge and so much love in their heart that they wanted to connect with their parents in ways that maybe they couldn't, or their grandparents. They know all of this. And so I love to relight that fire. And in doing so, it's so healing because you all know this on some level. Yeah. And I'm just here to wake it up and give you permission to feel it and to parent your children in ways that you should have been parented.
Yep. I think that's one of the big roadblocks for some. A couple of things that I just thought of. One, like for parents who say, they ask me, well, what do I do? How do I do it? You already know how to do it. Just listen to your own inner voice and your inner guide. And like as a test, if you kind of feel yourself, disconnecting, and like you don't look at your children when you're saying like, we need to do this thing that you think is horrible. If you, like most time they look past their kids as if they can't look them directly in the eye because they know they're really hurting them. But they think, well, if I look, if I don't make eye contact, it's not there. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So if you can't, for parents,
so that connection is so important.
Yeah. If you can look at your kids, basically, if you can connect with them, you can unparent them. But basically, you already know what to do. You know what hurts them. You know what hurts you. And most of us weren't parented the right way and weren't parented the way that we wished we were. And so that's painful to do it differently, because then that brings up the like, oh man, I wish I had it this way when I was growing up. But as you said in your book, we're the pioneers and like the ones breaking the circle. And
yes,
it's
and I think it's the most natural way to parent, isn't it? When you really think about it, if we were all on islands away from societies, cultures, this is the way you would naturally parent. It's very instinctual and it makes sense and it feels good, and parenting is supposed to be joyful. And when you're parenting from the model of control and authoritarian kind of dynamic where you're forcing children to do things against their will and you're punishing them, and there's so much that comes into play that feels so negative and so terrible, but people don't realize that there's another way. And so parenting to them might seem really, really negative. And I'll tell you, parenting this way is the most joyful I could even get across to you. It's so wonderful. Now, my kids are children, they're human beings, they fight, they have issues like any other kids, but everything's handled a little bit differently than most people handle things. So it really, really is a joyful way to live.
So yeah, so there is, yeah, it's a joyful way to live. All right, I'll leave it there for now. I think we covered that pretty well. Thank you, Dayna.
Okay, you're welcome.
I wanted to ask, a lot of parents have been asking, if both parents work, how would you see it working then? How would you unschool if they say, well, both of us have to work?
Well, I mean, there's several ways you could go about it. So I just want to share that I've been educating parents for almost 20 years with Unschooling. I've spoken in different parts of the world. I've been on television at least a dozen times on different shows, talk shows. We've been on Dr. Phil, Oprah Winfrey filmed us. So this has gotten out there, and every single type of family is doing this, whether it's single parent, whether it's both parents working, whether it's both parents working at home.
Okay.
A lot of people do like if it's a community of a lot of people that want to parent this way, they share childcare. There's intentional communities doing it. There's hiring a mother's helper. I had a mother's helper when my kids were pretty little. So I had this wonderful girl who was also unschooled, and I think she was 16 at the time. And she would come over, and I would be home, and she would help with the kids. And so if both parents have to work, a lot of times parents might be able to work it out to work at different times of the day. Maybe extended family that could come over and help.
Okay.
So it's the same thing. Like if you're thinking of school as just childcare anyway, I mean, it's interesting. If you're looking at it as just childcare, then I think you should rethink it anyway. But I do think there's always a way, whether you're hiring somebody. And I think it's really important. Interestingly enough, there was a time where I was educating. I actually had daycare workers and preschool teachers and nannies. I worked with a bunch of nannies who wanted to learn this philosophy because it's becoming, although it's kind of on the edge of parenting and information, it really is growing. And so there's this small little niche market of nannies, people that are sorting out nannies in childcare that know this philosophy and will respect children and not punish them and treat them with dignity and connection and respect and facilitate learning. So this is growing wildly. And if people find somebody, a childcare provider that comes into their home or somewhere, to ask them what kind of philosophy they live. Ask questions.
Sure.
You'd be surprised how you could educate somebody and you could share, well, this is our philosophy, and would you be willing to learn about it? I will talk to them. I can give them a class. I mean, I've done that so many times. So, and my point is, don't let that stop you. Don't let that stop you. There's so many options in that regard.
Yeah, you're right. I think it comes back to that sort of trusting that life will help you if you go in the right direction. If you put forth what you want, then you'll get what you want. And if you say, I'm going to figure out a way to do this, a way will be provided to you. And
I love that. Yes. Just keep trusting, and it will come.
Keep trusting. There's always a way. Youbanfa. Cool. Yeah. Thank you, Dayna.
You're welcome.
Let's see. We covered the pressure thing. What about for parents who are on the fence? They love the idea, but there's something, I guess, holding them back. Has there been a way to help them get that just momentum going forward for you in your teaching?
Yeah, definitely. It's really normal for parents to fear something, and that's almost always the roadblock. And so when parents contact me and they say, I really want to do this, but I'm fearful of this, or I'm nervous about this, we work on that fear, because so many of our fears, if you're fearing something, it's amazing how you create this false picture of reality. You think it's reality when you're fearful, but it really isn't. It's fear driving the whole thing, and the image that you have of the future or what could unfold is generally completely false because you're in a fearful state. So I usually help parents trace back the issues of the roots of their fear. I really like the work of Byron Katie. Byron Katie is an author who really helps people with this kind of thing, and I've learned a lot from her, and I support other parents in much the same way, where I ask questions, what are you afraid of? And they might say, well, I'm afraid my child will never have the opportunities of a child in school. And we'll trace that back and say, is that true, though? What makes you feel as though that's true? And so we'll break it down into the tiniest parts of their fear. And by the end of it, they see that, wow, my fear was just based on programming and conditioning I had, and it wasn't truth, and it wasn't reality. And there's hundreds, if not thousands, of examples of kids right now. There's unschoolers in college, in the best colleges in the world. There's unschoolers. A lot of unschoolers wish not to go to college because they're completely self-taught, and they've started their own businesses, and they're extremely successful at whatever they're doing. So it's no matter what your goals for your children, ultimately it's kind of like rethinking your goals, because your goals and maybe society's goals might not be what your child wants. So my goals have always been my child's happiness and our family connection. And through that being the focus, it's led us to amazing, amazing places that I never even thought were possible. So you really have to reprioritize. So I'm willing to work with anyone who's having fears. And oftentimes when I go and speak somewhere, I offer, like, I'll do one-on-one sessions with people while I'm in the area. And so that's something that I do really commonly, and help whatever parents are needing more one-on-one help. So I love to do that.
That's really good. I was thinking to summarize that as putting your child's happiness as like the guiding light that you always keep in focus. Like, this is the goal, the child's happiness. This is my goal. You know, all that other stuff is not as important. I think that'll go such a long way to helping parents really get over that fear. And also too, what you said, there's so many fears, and it's kind of like, but they're not real, you know, even if they're on TV, etc. It's like people, you come home and you see your friends like hiding under the sheets, like what's wrong? They go, oh, I can't go outside, there's zombies outside. What are you talking about? I just saw this movie and there were zombies outside, so I can't go outside, right? It's the same thing as I saw this thing on the news and it says blah, 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 you know, so I gotta do this. It's the same type of thing. Yeah, it's not actually real. Most of the fears, they're not real, and they usually don't come true. I mean, we could talk about this, ad nauseum, but it's just something, you just gotta do it, and eventually, once you start doing it, you realize, wait a second, this is working okay, actually. It's okay.
And it takes meeting people that are doing it too, because to me, I'm just an average person. And I was never this totally radical person at all. I was just kind of a normal person. I went to school myself. I went to college. I worked normal jobs. And then when I had children, everything changed. And I just followed my heart and followed their needs. And it led me here. So if you can see that I'm doing it, then you could see that it's possible. Yeah. And there's so many people all over the world living this way. Hundreds of thousands of people are living more joyful lives by facilitating their children's interests with all the resources in the world right now, with the internet and so many different resources. It's impossible to keep your children from learning. Put it that way. It really is.
So true. Yeah, it's so true. They'll be so smart just by hanging out on the internet, Khan Academy, whatever, just YouTube videos, etc. Yeah, yes. That's so true. That's so true. I would like you to share your unschool, or how you began unschooling your kid, your children. I already know this story with Devin, but I was wondering if you could share that with the people watching this.
Do you mean the story like after he was born, or the story?
What made you want to unschool him? What gave you that sort of like, I'm not going to send him to school. I'm going to teach him myself. I'm going to really just let him be in charge of his education. I trust my child.
Well, I think it's because I trusted him with every other area of his life.
Okay.
I was very involved parent. I held him when he wanted to be held. I always carried him in a baby wrap. He was always on my body. I never bought like strollers and tons of cribs or anything. I went with really instinctual parenting. And so that being said, I just always listened to him, and I always trusted him. And the same way that he learned to walk and talk, I wondered if he would learn everything else necessary in the same way, with support and not pushing him and forcing him to do things against his will. And so I just always lived that philosophy, and he wanted to learn. He loved it. So whenever he was, all humans do, all children love to learn when it's not forced. Mm-hmm. So we're taught that things need to be really difficult. Learning has to be hard, but what's hard is forced learning. When you force children against their will to do boring workbook pages and go through things that are so tedious and don't have any real context in their lives, it's really negative. But natural learning is joyful, and it's like breathing. Learning is like breathing when it's not forced. So the story of how I just did it like I always did from when he was a baby, and that same philosophy made sense, and I kept going with it.
That's awesome. Yeah. Wow. That's so, I guess, so simple, but so profound. And
I know.
if it's
Sometimes
so,
the most simplest things
yeah,
are. We complicate things. Everything is so complicated for parents. It's so complicated, and there's so much fear and warnings and all these different theories of how to get children to learn. It's all right there. It's so simple. All you need to do is connect with your child, trust your child, and have a relationship where they communicate to you what they love and what they don't love. And I mean, it's like a relationship with anybody you care about, whether it's your partner or your mother or your sister or your best friend. It's just extending that same respect and kindness and love to children, your children, like you do everybody else. And that in itself is so profound to people. It really is, because we look at them in our culture all over the world, and every single culture is dogs that need to be trained. Like they're dogs that need to be trained, and we assume negative intent from them, and we have to punish them when they're bad and reward them when they're good. And would you do that with your partner? Would you do that with your best friend?
Absolutely not.
And so you don't do any of those crazy things with children. You just love them, and you facilitate their interest in their learning like you would with anybody that you love that's excited about something. And as simple as it is, the hard part is everything in the outside world telling you that what you're doing is crazy or wrong and that it's not going to work. Well, I'm here to say that not only does it work, but it works 10 times better than I could even dream it worked. And so I guess one of my purposes in life is to educate people about this, because I'm so passionate about it. And I want the world to meet my children and to see how different they all are. They're so different from each other. So we're not creating these sheep, these kids that all know the same thing, that are all taught the same thing, that all are told that they need to be doing a certain career for success and money. It's not like that. My kids could not be more different. You would not even believe that they're all related. That's how different they all are. It's amazing.
Wow. They're truly authentic. Yeah, yes. I can't say it better. Thank you, Dayna. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
One thing popped into my head for parents who are just starting. I remember in your book you said one way to, like, if you're pulling your kids out of school, there's going to be kind of a transition period as they and the parents both adjust to a life of freedom. And yes. I like what you wrote about for parents to sort of model it is, I was talking with Crystal last night, my girlfriend who's Chinese, and she said, yeah, it's hard for most Chinese parents because they themselves are kind of boring, like they don't really have any interests. And I like what you said about parents to sort of get the ball rolling is you start like just doing something that you're interested in, and your kids will see that and be like, oh, I want to learn about what my dad's doing or what my mom's doing. And then they'll start to sort of open up to really what their interests are.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I'm so glad you mentioned that. So humans learn when they're internally motivated and they're interested in something. But unfortunately, most of us have gone through systems in which we were forced to learn what other people thought we should know. We lived the agenda of other people, which was usually pretty mundane, and it was only to get good grades and only to compete and only to go jump through these hoops.
Yeah.
So we learned as adults, we couldn't wait till we were out of school, so we could just do whatever we wanted. And a lot of us, the thought of certain learning just turns us off so much that we can't even imagine it. But what I encourage parents to do, this is not just about how to be with your children. This is not a way of life of how to be with children as much as it is how to be in this world, period. This unschooling is for everybody. So what unschooling means is not doing school at home, but it's not uneducating. It's not unlearning. We need to continue to educate ourselves and learn until we're dead. We're supposed to. We're meant to. And if you're not growing and expanding as a person, and continually raising your consciousness and continually learning new things to expand, we're depressed. We're meant to. We're depressed. We're miserable. So I know that my children will never, ever think that learning is supposed to end at age 18. They're never going to have any idea that that's a thing to just stop learning. So it's important for me. And now it's just a second nature, and it's something I always do, to continually be learning things as an adult, to model to my children that learning never ends. So I love everybody that's watching this to ask yourself right now, what have you always wanted to learn? Think back to when you were little, and think back even to maybe yesterday. What have you always wanted to learn? Have you always wanted to learn to paint? Have you wanted to learn to do yoga? Have you wanted to learn to do amazing things that you never thought you could? it's time to go and sign up for that class, or to go buy yourself some watercolor paints and some paper and an easel. It's time to just continue to expand as a human being. So humans learn best when they're interested in something. Self-interest learning, self-motivated learning. Like anybody watching this right now, you want to be learning, more than likely, what I'm talking about.
Yes.
So hearing about it feels good, doesn't it?
Yes.
Doesn't it feel so good? You're just like, your brain is just like, this is awesome. I knew this. I love this.
Yes.
This makes sense. Do you know that the way you feel right now is the way children feel when they're interested in something? It's the way everybody feels, and you're facilitating that learning and that interest. This is the way learning is supposed to feel throughout a child's entire life, like throughout their whole childhood. It can be like this. So the connection with learning is really positive, and children never stop learning. In fact, most unschoolers that I know that are adults now are multi-careered. They're not just the goal of being a doctor or the goal of one career. What are you going to be? Most adult unschoolers, they're multi-profession. They have multiple sources of income. They have so many interests, and they're constantly evolving. So all these new opportunities are coming into their lives. Now, my son Devin is a blacksmith, and he has been. But this last year, or in the year before, he started self-studying how to program computers. What is it called when you're writing script for computers? See, he could tell me. He's probably, if he sees this, he's going to be like, oh, Mom, it's coding. It's called coding.
Yeah.
So he learned how to code, and now this software company just hired him, and he's creating games just because he loved gaming.
That's
and
awesome.
He wanted to learn how it was done. He taught himself, and now, so he's a blacksmith, and he's coding. He's like, oh, Mom, I've created a few games, and one of them got bought already. And so that is really, really normal and natural. Like my daughter Tiffany, who's a model and now is getting into music. She loves singing, and so now she's making YouTube videos. And I mean, so all these you constantly have opportunities. And I think that's one of the best gifts we could ever give our children is to model for them and teach them how to learn. And that you can be happy you continuously have new opportunities. So that in itself is such a freeing, more natural way to be than having children live their entire lives to prepare for the future.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah. And so they're living now. Unschooled children are all living now, and they're living rich, full lives. And if somebody asked my children, what do you want to be when you grow up? They would look at them like, what are you talking about? I'm something now. Like,
Yeah, right.
What are you talking about? Because they learn to be really present-minded. They're living in the now. They're not living every day doing tedious, terrible things at a desk all day, every day for some kind of foreseeable future. Their lives, their careers, who they are is happening now. And so, I mean, think about it, Michael. Like, how many of us spend our whole adult lives, or most of our adult lives, trying to get back to that Zen mentality that was so robbed of us?
Yeah.
We want to learn how to live in the moment, live in the present. Everything is about that. I've read so many books on it. Oh my goodness. My children had never had that natural mentality robbed from them. That's a natural way that humans are supposed to be, is to live in the now. But we think that it's something that we need to rebuild. Well, we do, because it was taken from us, and we have to relearn it. But my children, unschooled children, never have to rebuild. It's there because we're not forcing them to constantly be preparing for the future. So it really is a different way of being, and I know it might scare some people, but I promise I can help you feel better about it, to the point where you can build a whole community and support system around you and really support each other, because this is a growing movement that is, in 100 years from now, a lot of people will be doing this. This is going to be so commonplace. Everyone watching and those of us doing it, we just happen to be pioneers. We might be the first ones doing it and being brave enough to do it. But this is changing the course of history and how humans learn. And if you want to be part of that because it feels right to you, then I invite you to embrace this philosophy and learn. I'm here for you.
That's so good. I wanted to say, I live in China, and I was thinking that we've gotten a lot of really good feedback from the articles I've written, and people really do want to learn more. And so I was wondering if you had any interest in coming to China, actually, to do some of these workshops.
Wow, yes. Oh my goodness. Wow.
Yeah?
Yeah. Yes.
I remember.
I would love to. I mean, any opportunity to help anybody that wants to learn about this. I live for this. This is my passion. And so any opportunity, and especially to come there to your beautiful country and learn and connect with people and explore, I would love that. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm going to speak Chinese for a second. 他说他很有兴趣来到过来中国，我们中国帮助我们做 那个 Unschooling，所以你有兴趣的话，麻烦你扫这个二维码，就是我的微信的二维码，然后发一个消息给我，说我要 Dayna Martin 过来中国，and yeah, let's make it happen. That would be so good because yeah, China is such an interesting land of like such huge extremes where when you come here you will see like whoa there's a lot of buildings growing up. Like I grew up in Phoenix and in Shenzhen it's like got 50 times as many like tall skyscrapers. You're like whoa everywhere. And so yeah, but it, that's on one side, and then the other extreme is like dirt houses kind of, and it's like whoa that's kind of rough. And the thinking too, there's so many people who are minds open, just want anything, like give me something new, etc. So I really think that would be perfect for them. So yeah, so let's make that happen, and let's get you out to China.
Oh, that would be so great. I would be so honored to come visit everybody, connect with everybody, and yes, wow, we will make that happen.
All right, let's do it. So yes. I think that's it for me. I think that's a good place to leave it right here. I mean, there's so much more we could talk about. Maybe we could do it another time, but this is just a sampler course, and then the details, like I remember parents ask, well, what about if they just want to watch TV? What if they just want to play video games all day? Blah, blah, what about this? What about this? What about this? I think that'd be good for an in-person interview to go into the sort of specifics of how to do that, because I'm sure you faced all those challenges and overcome them. Yeah, and I mean, you've heard these questions a million times before too. All right, so the audio's kind of glitching a little bit on this international connection, so the universe is telling us it's time to cut it here, I believe. And so thank you so much, Dayna. Let's talk again soon, and let's bring you and hopefully other members of your family to China too.
Oh, that would be so great. I would love that. They would love that. Yeah. We've never been. It would be such an honor to visit. So thank you.
You're very welcome. All right. Dayna, have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much for taking the time for us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.